Alrighty, here's the plan gap plugin skill. I've been using this on some projects, some side projects, and this is sort of a incubation of the different things that I'm finding working for building up an agentic spec. That one's not really good, that I've done like front loaded a lot of review, and I don't have to do as much interventions when I'm saying, hey, implement. So what it's actually achieving is a markdown document with these sections. It's a gap analysis. What's the current state? What's the desired state? What's the difference? Mapping that out into tasks. And then this is the, I guess, agentic part. You try to have what are the quantifiable measures that it knows it needs to keep looping on so it's converging towards success. So you need to have success measures, and something that I found out is also having what are negative measures that are penalties for if it's going off track. Now, I'm doing a lot of this is just like manual prompting, and where this steps up a bit now is specifically as a skill instructing it that the current state, go and explore the code base. If I've given you a brief, like migrate our session auth middleware. So our session auth middleware, that's the current state. That's the thing it's going to go and look at and analyze what's going on there. Then we want to migrate it to OAuth 2 PKCE. Like, okay, well that's the desired state. So we come in here, it'll try and do a lot of code analysis to figure out what is actually going on at the moment. And then from that, with the future state stuff, you've given it a direction. It'll get it to do web search, where necessary doing like academic paper searching, trying to find GitHub repos, any sort of prior art code, being able to leverage anything that already exists, things that are solved problems. If there's any frameworks in the current state, reading the documentation. Like if what they've used is maybe a few versions old and the thing that they're trying to solve is the latest version of the documentation, go and check that. So these are all the things in the future state agent, that desired state. It goes and does that research. So it makes it easier. Like I roughly want to give this compass bearing, but it goes and gets the specific details. Now, another thing I find is a citation hallucination. Getting like Playwright or WebFetch to go and like, give me evidence. I need you to go and fetch that URL and check that the content that you're getting from that page has the same content that you've just claimed. And I've had situations where things like F1 scores were off by like 15% because they hallucinated it when they went and checked it. It's like, oh wait, no, the real value is this. And like, good. So things like that, trying to get ahead of those failure modes. And after we've got that, the synthesis is doing that actual gap analysis for us and create the gap section. Now the thing is, once we've got each of those gaps, they're kind of like a high level summary. What I want it to do is spin off yet another agent for each of them, almost like a developer's gone and done a Spec, analyze that one thing in detail, give me code snippets, raise a more detailed like Jira ticket per se, and I want a list of exact outputs. When that ticket is done, you should have these things. The quality measures and failure modes, as mentioned, success measures. This is the sort of thing where there's yet another agent. Go and look at all of their README files, make files, package.json, any tooling about linting, formatting, type checking, testing. Go and look at what the existing standards are. If there's any agentic memory files where there's certain gotchas about the project, go and pull those things in and populate these quality standards and failure modes, because we know, oh, if we fall for this gotcha, that's also a thing we want to avoid. So this is like curating it all together and having a bit of a detailed breakdown. Now, after we've got all these sub-agents doing this research for us to get this first draft, there's still going to be some ambiguity and some unresolved questions. Now, the thing that's happening here is for each gap, there's going to be some ambiguous things. What this does is looks at all the questions, and I've told it you're allowed to ask one question. Only one question. what is the next most impactful question that will likely answer as many other questions as possible. And then it's making sure that attention is precious. So I have to answer the least amount of questions. When it asks a question, it provides multiple choice. A educated version of like, hypothetically, a developer would recommend this or this or this as possible options, and here's the reasons why. Most of the time I could be like A, C, B, and answer that. Sometimes if I give it a bit more reasoning and rationale as to why I've given an answer, it's like, oh, well that answers like 5 other questions for me. Now, when I give an answer, that's where it integrates it across all other questions before asking another question. And that's where some of the coding agents don't do that just yet. But codifying this into a framework actually makes it less that I need to review, less I need to talk, less decisions I need to make, and really prioritizing my attention is a scarce resource that I'm trying to get maximum leverage out of. So, each of these sections, since my attention is scarce, will also codify diagrams. And gap analysis, metadata, bench, issues. Here's one that I did on a hobby project. So it's gone and looked at what is the current state, what's my desired state, and then it made up this term, and I quite like it, the gap map. So what's that difference between each, and what are the, in this particular situation, there's 6 items that need to be addressed, and it also has a dependency chain. Awesome. Now, as part of that, agent, I do have specific rules about how it will use the Mermaid CLI to go and render both a dark theme and a light theme. And there is a whole bunch of color theory for how to do good data viz, essentially leveraging the color channels of the hue to represent different categorical things. And then within the same category, playing with the saturation and luminance, even opacity, to have like, what are some subtle variants within the same category of thing, which we see in even this diagram. All the categorical things are the right hue, but then you get the different subcolors within it. And this is what the overall document structure looks like, enforcing mermaid diagrams and some good visual encoding. Now, the reason why I do this is it's really easy for an agent, if you look at the raw, like, this is a concept, this is another concept, and here's a relationship between those two things. Semantically, it understands this relates to that. So I can look at a picture and much easier review the plan that, is it on track for what I want it to do? Oh, that arrow is the wrong way around, or that concept isn't the right concept. So this makes review a lot easier for what it's actually trying to do. Also, color is kind of nice. So that's that. Now, in our actual agent capabilities, I have an issue that I want to try and address, where we're trying to automate some metadata. Now, I started work on it, and I prompted it saying, hey, I've lost the bit up the top there. I'll get that later. But what it said is, in this ADR part, the refinement phase, it found 5 questions that it wanted to address. So addressing the single source of truth for where should we get the metadata, we can make it one spot, and then have a script automate updating all the other almost derived files. So it's made some recommendations here, explain why it's made the recommendation. And I said, oh, actually, I think this other file, of course, it contains everything that we need. So it kind of reversed the logic of what it was trying to do. It's saying, these files should be the source, and then we can make that one. It's like, no, flip it around. So yeah, it's saying that's a cleaner plan. Resolving the ADRs. Yep, there we go. 3 ADRs resolved from 1 answer. And there's 2 questions remaining. So that leaves me with my last question that I'm going to answer now. It had already been cooking for about 10 minutes. I'm trying to save you some time here. But this is what it would look like essentially, where, okay, it answered 3 questions from 1 answer. We're now down to the last question. Cool. And it's the Mermaid CLI to again update the diagrams and make sure that it is correct. Cool. So making this, so I often will git ignore asterisk underscore cache because there's a whole bunch of PyTest, rough, MyPy that already get ignored anyhow. So the Mermaid CLI cache, making different variants for light and dark. So this is generating all the PNGs of each one at a high resolution for me. So I can just go and have a look at, let's close that down for a bit. Preview. Cool. Now I can go and look at and review this. Oh, you know, I want dark mode, but I know. Get rid of review over there. Yeah, cool. All right, so there's G1, scaffolding, metadata sync, readme generation, answered all those questions, current process, desired process, what's our gap map, there's 3 things to address, and the dependencies. So to address G1, this would be essentially a ticket. The outputs would be, there's a script file and it does all these things, blah, blah, blah. And this is why each of those gap agents, it's going in detail. So having all these short snippets, when I say, hey, agent swarm, go ahead, all the critical parts of the code, anything that's like a template or a pattern that it's like distilled from some other prior art, it's like, here's the critical thing that you need to know. And this is almost like it's few shot prompting each of those sub agents when you get into like a swarm. And being a markdown file, it's a permanent source that if there's compaction or restarting a session, it comes back to it and goes, okay, here's what I need to do. Here's my measures of success. Domain specific failure modes to avoid. I've set up my own Claude code here where there's like extra rules that I've got. So it's gone and scanned those and said, hey, look, here are all these other conventions about the project that you need to be compliant about. And these are success measures. Just double reinforcing that in that context, when an agent starts up clean, it needs to know these things so it knows how to increment and ratchet to success. Cool. Now, the last thing I want to show, we go back to this. Cool. I want to go plan gap. I want to, where docs, this one. Come on. Relative path. I want to migrate this plan document pop to that. Yeah, and let's see how well that goes. So what I want is, I've been doing local iterations on this, but I could just say, hey, here's a GitHub issue. That's the source, and actually keeps in sync a local markdown file that the agent will iterate on, but it keeps syncing it to the GitHub issue. Yep, it's found the GitHub CLI, it's doing its updates, exists. Cool, it's reading its rules of what it should be doing, reading the file of what it's going to use. Yep. And this is where it winds up having its working directory for where it'll play with that markdown file, which we can see here, GitHub issues. So that's the one that it's iterating on. But if it winds up redrawing things with its local one, this docs plans, it'll have another GitHub issues folder under it. Cool, so that migration is complete. Cool. And that's that issue again, it's all updated. Our diagrams, and these are actual Mermaid diagrams, it's not the PNGs. Tables. Gap map. All the details. Now, I think I could ask it, because there is a limit on issue bodies of like 65k characters or something like that. So you can tell if it's getting too big to split out all those gaps into sub issues. And this is a little change comment of if I'm gonna keep iterating on it, what happened and why. Cool. When I get some time, I'm gonna say Claude Go, implement, and there'll be a PR ready. Catch us later.